for you, go inside and receive these words as the opening of this exploration that we're doing together. And this quote, which is not usual for me, I always quote from the guide lectures. This quote is from the Gospel of Thomas, of St. Thomas, and they're Christ's words. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what is within you will destroy you. No, those are not the words. I'm going to say it again. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. I'm going to read it again. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what is within you, and what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So, for me, the definition of a spiritual power, being spiritual or spirituality, is the shift of focus from outer to inner. And I really believe that that's a big part of what the guide is offering us, to connect to our inner reality as the cause, as the source of our life experience. And what lives within us is not only the lower self, the dark, but also the light. We wouldn't be alive if we didn't if we weren't full of light, full of love that animates us, that animates the universe. And I believe that Christ's words are as potent and are as connected to bring out what is within us. It's as much about our light as it is about our dark. What I'm going to focus on today in relationship to the incredible disruption and crisis that we find ourselves in, especially in my country, but maybe most likely in the world, is the dark that I'd like to focus on. However, I'd like to say some words about not bringing out the light. If you do not allow your spontaneous soul movement to move, if you do not allow yourself to express your creativity, if you do not allow yourself to dance and sing and engage with life from your heart, that will destroy you as well. It's almost like death by paper cuts. You will stagnate. You'll be suffocated by everything that wants to move forth that you hold back. Now, why do you hold it all back? I believe, and from my experience with myself and with the multitudes of people I've worked with, that we hold back our light because we hide from our dark. And you can't let one flow without being engaged with the other. There is a real split inside of most human beings, and I certainly found it in myself, and I'm sure it exists in all of you, where we split off our dark part, the parts that we don't want to see, the parts that we don't want to recognize or feel or experience, and present the best in us, but we do not want to see the worst in us. And it's a constant battle to bring it to consciousness. We're afraid of it. And we've created a lot of ways of avoiding it. But in the end, not being in relationship with our darkness, with our destructiveness, will destroy us. And I believe that what we are experiencing today on many levels, on several levels, is an example of how what we do not bring forth within us will destroy us. We are in a crisis of COVID-14, climate crisis, and fascism. And not only in my country, now this has begun to shift a little bit with our new president, but it's been so ensconced now in the United States, and it's been so brought forth by the ex-president that it's obvious that it exists, but it also exists in different parts of the world as well. In Brazil, in Poland, in Hungary, in Russia, in China, and other places, Turkey. I mean, I can't begin to name all of them, where fascism and oligarchy exists. And I've come to recognize in my studying that COVID-19, this is what I see, the climate crisis and fascism are outpicturings of separation, materialism, and half-truths and confusion. The three principles of evil that the guide offers us in lecture 248. COVID-19 certainly is an outpicturing of separation. Climate crisis is certainly an outpicturing of materialism, where we continue to go for economic growth and more luxury and more ease, and we are destroying the world we live on because of that greed. Because of the greed, but I want to say also because of the deep egocentricity that lives in the world, which greed is a part of. And the half-truth and lies, fake news, we don't even know what the truth is anymore. You know, we hear all this information, but we don't know if it's true anymore. Is it fake news? Is it reality? And the good news about all of this is that it really calls us to coming back to ourselves to know what the truth is. We each individually have to find our own truth when the truth out there is not trustworthy. We don't know anymore what the truth is. So much has been hidden, so much has been lied about. It's very confusing. And certainly you can see how materialism causes the climate crisis. And egocentricity is the umbrella over all of these things, the separation, materialism, and half-truths and confusion. Years ago, I read a book called Dispelling Wetiko. And Wetiko, it's by a man named Paul Levy. I highly, highly recommend it for those of you who want to really pursue the dark side, which is my interest to really explore and discover and work with the dark side of our nature. Because I have to say, I'm a very creative person. I love creating, but knowing that part of what I create comes from an unconscious aspect that I don't want to see because I'm afraid of meeting my own destructiveness, hampers my creative movement in other ways. And so I have been very diligent on my path towards looking at my own darkness and in helping other people do so as well. It liberates us. It liberates us because we have free will. And when you are in relationship with your own dark, you can choose in that moment a different way. But if you're not in relationship with your lower self, with your destructiveness, you don't have a choice. And the guide has said in many different lectures, what stays unconscious has more power than what is conscious in creating. You may have wonderful positive intention, but if you're not in relationship with your own negative intention, it's gonna undermine your positive intention every time. And so wherever you are unfulfilled, wherever you are in conflict, wherever you're suffering, in whatever different ways we suffer, you got to know that there's a lower self at work. There's a negative intention at work. So the work of the path is discovering this dark side to liberate us to being able to express our light. That's the intention of the path work. Very often I've heard people say, why do we have to look at the dark so much? And that is the reason, because looking for your darkness liberates you to embrace your light, to embody your light, to come forth without fear. So over the course of the last few months, I've written a few things down that I'd like to bring to you and read to you. And then I would like to open the table here, the screen, the whatever, what is it called? Whatever. And to everybody who's here with either questions or contributions or stories that you could share about this. But I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from some things I've written and see if I can illuminate some of this more clearly. And I'm really open to questions. Oh, I want to say one more thing. For me, it's been the thing that's most important in what I've been bringing to my groups and the people I work with, which is, what is the place where most of us are stuck in the world, I believe, is the mask. Now, I believe that the lower self, the mask, is a part of the lower self. I don't think it's separate from the lower self. The mask is what the lower self uses to hide itself from you. Not from the world, but from you. So it can keep its power by staying unconscious. The mask is one of the most important things to look for in your process, because it's not the destructiveness that lives in you that's most disturbing, but it is the denial of it. It is the, well, there's a quote here. Let's see. From the Mutuality lecture. The cause of all of this destructiveness is not the actual existence of the still present evil aspects, but lack of awareness of it. If you are alienated from your own unconscious, you must act out what you deep in yourself know to exist. I think that's what we're meeting now in the world, where we're stuck in our mask. Our mask is made up of justifications and rationalizations and excuses for our destructiveness. The lower self uses our wounds and our traumas from history and the images that we created around those experiences to justify our destructive behavior. So for instance, from the mask, you would say, well, I won't love because when I was a little girl, I was so abused. And that's the reason that I don't love. Or I won't trust because I was so betrayed as a child. Or that the world is not trustworthy. All of those things that we really, really believe are the mask. You don't love because you were hurt as a child or you weren't loved as a child. You don't love because you have a negative intention not to. There is no because. But we are all caught in that place of believing our because. We're caught in believing that the reason that we cannot open and be free to bring our love and light to the world is because the world is a dangerous place. And we create the dangerous place by not bringing forth our light. So it just, it validates what we believe, right? Look at what we've created together. Together. There's no one to blame. This is what we're in. This is where we are on the earth plane right now. So let me see if there's anything else I'd like to read. To you from what I've written. Okay. So this is where we are. We're alienated, lost, acting out. We're alienated from ourself, from our own destructiveness, from wherever we're still alienated from it, which I know that there are pieces in me that I'm alienated from. And I know that it's destructive and that it keeps me unpresent. This is where we are, alienated, lost, acting out. Whether it is from the ignorance of our unconscious evil aspects or from aligning with our mask, which justifies our acting out, we are alienated from our core essence, which knows unity. Every one of our cells contains the genius of universal oneness. And we alienate ourselves from connecting to that knowing, that deep knowing which lives in each one of our cells because we avoid looking at our own destructiveness and therefore get identified with our mask. And in that place, we're lost and we're stuck.
Could you say that once more, whether ignorance from our unconscious? That was amazing.
Yes, who just said that? Oh, hi. Okay. This is where we are, alienated, lost, acting out. Whether it is from the ignorance of our own unconscious evil aspects, or from aligning with our mask, which justifies our acting out, we are alienated from our core essence, which knows unity. Okay, thank you. I'm going to read one more thing that I wrote before I open the screen to everybody, and to hear what you can bring forth in adding to this discussion, this exploration. I want to learn from you as well. The lower self is tricky. We have become so accustomed to our destructive attitudes to the point of not recognizing them for what they are. We're walking around, we're wonderful path workers, we're committed and devoted to doing this work, and yet I continue to find how clueless I am about some of my destructiveness. And I have the great good fortune of having friends like my dear sister Sage, or even my family, my sons who grew up in the pathwork, who can challenge me about my destructiveness and tell me about its effect. And I'm so grateful for that. And there used to be a time when I would go, no, I would feel humiliated, I'd get defended. At this point, I open and welcome the feedback that I need to recognize my own destructiveness, because I don't want to do it anymore. So I have that great good fortune of having that kind of feedback. But many of us don't. And there are many times I don't get the feedback. And I guarantee you, and I'm going to read this again, we have become so accustomed to our destructive attitudes to the point of not recognizing them for what they are. We don't even know that we're being destructive, except when our life gets difficult or painful or unfulfilled. And then we come back to ourselves and said, oh, how did this happen? Or this is really painful. I have to look for the cause. We're so alienated. We don't recognize what they are. And we have been accustomed to projecting the cause of our disturbance outward. That it, to that point, it has become quite difficult to recognize our participation in the separation that enables the darkness that's permeating our human reality. So we are all together creating unconsciously from our negative intentionality without knowing it. And why? Because we're identified with our mask. We believe in our justifications for not being vulnerable, for not loving, for not giving our all to life, for not risking bringing our light. That's where we're identified with our mask. And the mask is the real culprit that is creating what exists on this earth plane, because we cannot connect cause and effect. We cannot bring it back to us and say, well, what did I do? How did I create this? Well, Wetiko. I was starting to tell you about this book, Wetiko. And in this book, it's called Dispelling Wetiko. The author, in his deep exploration of evil, tells us that the indigenous people of this country, when being overwhelmed and taken over by the Europeans that came over, didn't understand it. They didn't understand, and they thought it was a disease. They called it a virus. These people are sick. They have a virus. And the virus is our greed and our egocentricity. And in this book, this wonderful author, Paul Levy, has defined this disease as the me disease, malignant egophrenia. That's the cause of what's been created on the earth plane today. Our own inner virus. Separation, materialism, and half-truths and lies. The three aspects of evil and the tools of the lower self, hidden by our mask.